ACC starting down the road of unequal revenue sharing among its members. It's a road that will lead them to doom and to disaster. And George Kliavkoff, he visits SMU last night, watching the basketball game out there in the public. What does it mean? Welcome to episode 148 of College Football Speak Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. If you need that little bit of extra content to get you through the off season, subscribe to our channel, smash that like button if you like our content, and share the video with your family and friends. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get to the George Kliavkoff. Yes, he did it. He visited. Brett McMurphy was absolutely correct in his breaking news. SMU, rumored Pac-12 expansion candidate. This is in the Dallas Morning News. Keeps commissioner's visit under the radar. Kept it under the radar. Don't get me wrong, I don't think SMU had anything to do with leaking this information. I think it was the Pac-12 leaking that George was going to visit SMU, and I think it was a good leak. If I'm correct on this, I think it was a good leak. George Kliavkoff changing the narrative of what's been going on in the Pac-12. George Kliavkoff visited campus and attended a men's basketball game at the Moody Coliseum as the Pac-12 seeks schools to replace USC, UCLA. There it is, Kliavkoff out in the open, not quite under the radar, right? This is from Joseph Hoyt, again, the Dallas Morning News, University Park. If SMU had its way, likely no one outside a privileged few would have known he was there. Yes, if SMU had their way. But I do believe this was leaked by the Pac-12. The man who could hold the school's athletic future in his hands, he was there at SMU last night. But wait, was he actually at Moody Coliseum on Wednesday night as expected? I hope he's here, SMU senior Jordan Thompson said during the second half. A Pac-12 spokesman declined to comment on the reported visit. SMU officials didn't answer inquiries either, but a person with knowledge of the visit told the Dallas Morning News that Kliavkoff had made it to campus, that he sat and he was photographed during the men's basketball game against Temple on Wednesday night. Fans at Moody Coliseum were ready to welcome the Pac-12 commissioner. A lot of excitement at SMU, as you can imagine. The first 4 rows of the behind the basket student section were reserved for SMU football players who arrived just before tip-off to a packed arena with an energetic crowd rarely seen during SMU's current 9-16 season. One fan held a sign with a simple, relevant acronym, "Ponies are coming." A number 12 was added for good measure. Jack Joyce, an SMU senior from Nashville, even celebrated Kliavkoff's visit by adding PAC in red tape to his blue number 12 club baseball jersey. This is such a big opportunity to get up a conference, Joyce said. This is something we've been waiting for a long time. That's been a common feeling for SMU fans hoping to see their school join a Power 5 conference over the last decade. TCU was invited to join the Big 12 in 2011 on the heels of a Rose Bowl win. Last year, BYU, Central Florida, Cincinnati, Houston also received invitations to the Big 12. We felt we belonged in the Big 12, Joyce said. But we're ready to see what it's like to be in a conference like the Pac-12. News of Kliavkoff's potential visit to SMU had the campus buzzing with excitement, Joyce said. We saw it on Twitter, Joyce said. Everyone knew he would be here. Since the news broke in July of UCLA and USC's intention to leave the Pac-12 for the Big Ten, SMU has positioning itself for the next round of realignment. Multiple people familiar with the situation told the news that SMU officials had discussions with officials from the Big 12, the Atlantic Coast Conference, and the Pac-12 regarding expansion. So SMU, they made the phone call. Remember, realignment always starts with the school calling the conference, not the conference calling the school. SMU made the rounds. They called the Big 12, the Atlantic Coast Conference, ACC, and the Pac-12 regarding expansion. That should surprise no one. A pathway into Dallas-Fort Worth one of the biggest TV markets and most fertile recruiting grounds in the country, could be enticing for the Pac-12. It definitely is. SMU also recently broke ground on a $100 million expansion to Ford Stadium, and major stadium reconstruction has been the common theme for schools that have made the jump from the Group of Five to the Power Five. You have to feel good about where we're at, an SMU official told the news in July. In the months since, nothing has happened to shake that confidence, but realignment has been operating at a snail's pace, no question about it. In the Pac-12, no question about it. And a new media rights deal for the Pac-12 is overdue. Then, news broke Tuesday, thanks to Brett McMurphy at Action Network, that Kliavkoff was coming to campus. Clearly, SMU had done enough behind the scenes to warrant a visit, even if it didn't stay behind the scenes. It definitely did not stay behind the scenes. What does all this mean? I don't think George Kliavkoff would be visiting SMU out in the public, watching a basketball game. He knew. He was with the athletic director of SMU. He knew a picture was going to be taken of him. He knew that the news broke. I think it was leaked by the Pac-12. To change the narrative, to change the storyline, to get people confident and positive again. I believe it was the right move. We've talked about it in our last live show at Peek Around the Corner, that this was George Kliavkoff. This is exactly what he needed to do, and he leaked. He got it done. We think that's what happened. Anyways, here at Peek Around the Corner. Now, what does this mean? It means that the deal, man, it's there. It's there to be taken. It's there to get done. I think they're close. I think they're at the 1 yard line. SMU and San Diego State becoming the 11th and 12th member. 4 days ago, on February 5th, we did a live show, and it was titled, Everybody Calm the Bleep Down. On February 5th, there was this viral message being sent all over message boards and Twitter and everywhere saying that the Pac-12 was about to implode. We at Peek Around the Corner, we have not shied away at the fact that the Pac-12 needed to get a deal done. That your mark was about to come through the back window. They needed to get the deal done. They needed to expand with San Diego State and SMU. But on February 5th, we told everyone to calm down. There was no traction, no real intel that the Pac-12 was about to implode. And now look what's happening. The Pac-12 is about to expand with the 11th and 12th members. If George Kliavkoff is going to SMU out in the open to watch a basketball game and he doesn't have the votes from the presidents, he doesn't have the support from the potential media partners of Amazon and ESPN, then he's absolutely incompetent. We don't think he's absolutely incompetent. Yes, we've had our issues with George Kliavkoff and how he has communicated in the past, but he's not going to be seen in public at an SMU basketball game without having the votes and without having the numbers and support from this potential new media partners. So we think the deal's basically done. They're at the 1 yard line. The question is there a 13th and 14th member added? We don't think so at Peek Around the Corner, but you know what? This is being driven now by the media companies, Amazon. If they want the inventory, if they're willing to pay for it, the Pac-12 universities might just go for it. They might have to go for it. Okay, let's get to our next story. But on that first story, put your comments down in the comments section below the video. Let me know what you really think about George Kliavkoff being out in the open at an SMU basketball game. Is the deal done? Are they at the 1 yard line? We think yes. What do you think? Let's get to big story. ACC, they're having their winter meetings. Uneven revenue distribution model picking up steam in the ACC. Say it ain't so, Jim Phillips. Say it ain't so. Now we know he doesn't have many cards. He doesn't have good cards to play with. We don't believe the ACC can truthfully expand. And if they did expand their conference, the teams coming in would have to sign that long-term goal into 2036. And it would not reopen their media contract. That's a great myth out there that needs to be destroyed. Let's get into this article. This is from the Clemson Insider. Charlotte, and there's one certain there's one certain topic of conversation that administrators in attendance expect to be prevalent. Again, they're having the winter meetings this week. ACC. We'll have a lot of discussions on how to close the revenue gap in the ACC, Clemson Athletic Director Graham Neff said last week. More specifically, is the league on the verge of going to an unequal distribution of revenue? Neff said he's spoken to League Commissioner Jim Phillips, as well as administrators at the other 13 ACC institutions, who have indicated to him that the idea might not be as far-fetched as it may seem. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give it a little bit of warning. This is a terrible idea, and I'll get into it after the article. But again, put down your comments in the comments section. Now, everybody has their hat or their polo on for different schools based on where you invest, what your priorities are, and probably what your appetite is. But everybody is at the table and understands it's time to order, Neff said. So I've been pleased and optimistic about the general understanding within the league that, hey, this is something we really need to look at, and that's not easy. Again, this is Neff. This is the athletic director at Clemson. I emphasize that because I don't take it lightly, because forever the ACC, let alone all their other conferences that I'm aware of, has been equal revenue share. So the notion of kind of jumping the ditch or really considering rolling up the sleeves on, hey, we need to look at this differently, I think there's a really good understanding of that. Locked into a media rights agreement with ESPN into 2036, the ACC is well behind many of the Power 5 counterparts when it comes to revenue generation, particularly the SEC and the Big Ten. I'm going to skip the rest of that paragraph. The expanded college football playoff, which will go to 12 teams, beginning with the 2024 season, will help. For the time being, though, the money the ACC's media rights generates is split evenly among its schools. Notre Dame, a partial member, also gets a cut. But if the distribution of those funds was based on performance, which is one of the new revenue models Neff said is being discussed within the league, then the schools that receive higher payouts could shrink the gap between themselves and the competition in the more lucrative conferences. No, that gap's not going to be shrunk. Even with this performance, we'll talk about it at the end of the article. The Tigers have been the gold standard in the ACC for much of Dabo Swinney's tenure. They won the A Conference Championship since 2011, earned 6 college football playoff berths, won a pair of college football titles, and Clemson is responsible for all but one of the ACC college football appearances. Florida State was in the playoffs in 2014. I'm going to skip the middle paragraph and then go to the end, the last paragraph. And by the way, there's some relationship to investment, Neff said. So it's not just, hey, Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, because you're the big brands, you're going to get more slice of the pie. It's not that rudimentary. And that's not my lens either. But it should be based on performance, football success, postseason, college football playoffs, how you help drive television viewership and metrics and things like that. And we'll finish up this article here. Neff used Wake Forest, a private school with little history of sustained football success that's won 19 games the last 2 seasons, as an example. A different type of school, but how they performed recently, they've invested, Neff said. They've invested in the coach retention and facilities. So they're a great example of investment breeds success, which in theory would breed distribution. That's the kind of sequence of which we discuss. Ultimately, Neff said he believes the ACC will adopt a different revenue distribution model. We certainly have our lens at Clemson about how some of that should work. So I certainly have been pushy and very much have tried to drive that task. But again, it's a top of mind and very present for everybody. Okay. Look, I'm going to be blunt here. That's a lot about nothing. Unequal revenue sharing is, if the goal is for the schools to shrink the gap between themselves and the schools in the ACC to the Big Ten and the SEC, that's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket. How much more money do you think a Clemson or Florida State or Miami of Florida or whatever ACC school would win the conference championship? How much more money do you think they're going to get? A few million. That's it. There's 14 schools, plus you've got Notre Dame sitting there. There's 14 schools. And if you read that article, Clemson Insider, we'll post a link in the description box below the video. Other stuff is going to be thrown in the metrics. It's not just going to be based upon football wins or college, the conference championship. There's going to be other metrics included, and pretty soon it's going to be pretty much flat again. Look, ACC, they're going to be around where the Big 12 makes in media money. Also, the Pac-12, right? The ACC does have the ACC network, which is better than the ESPN Plus for the Big 12, and what may the Pac-12 may have that as well for their third-tier content. It's basically even. Those three conferences are basically even. They all have some advantages. They all have some disadvantages. But this goal, this unequal revenue sharing goal, is to close the gap between the highest performing ACC schools with the Big Ten and SEC. That's not doable. The math doesn't work. There's not enough money there. I don't care if you redistribute it. You give Clemson 2, 3, 4, 5% more. It does nothing to close the gap. I honestly believe this is a lot to do about nothing, in the sense that it's just going to cause more pain and more fracture within the conference. I do have suspicion. We at Peek Around the Corner have suspicion that maybe there's even some ACC schools that just want to bring this up, that want to push for it, possibly Florida State, a Miami of Florida, for example, that want to push it to have it be voted down. So in the future, they can argue that they tried to change something in the ACC to try to get more revenue, but they were shot down. That is speculation on our part, because the rest of this doesn't make sense. It's not going to work. Take out your napkin. Take out your pen. Write it up. I don't care what type of math you use. You're not going to shrink the gap that has any value to it. You're not going to shrink the gap with the Big Ten and the SEC with unequal revenue sharing. It just causes hardship within the conference. And again, there's so many cooks that are going to be in the kitchen on this. So many different type of metrics. Pretty soon there's going to be academic criteria where schools get more revenue, then basketball performance, and then baseball performance. And pretty soon, you don't have that much of an unequal revenue distribution. So, yeah, it's a disaster. It's going to lead to doom. We're going to be following that here in the next couple of days at Peek Around the Corner in the next weeks and months ahead. Tonight, we're going to have a live show starting at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Pacific, talking about this ACC unequal revenue sharing. We're going to be giving our way too early ACC predictions for 2023. We're also going to be discussing the Pac-12, what's going on, SMU, San Diego State. Finally, it's a fast-paced, moving story. So join us tonight here at College Football's Peek Around the Corner live show, call-in show. Give us a call, 763-260-1333. Call in. Don't be afraid. The water's warm tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Until next time, which is tonight, please, from all of us at Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please, you all take care of each other. Thank you so very much.